Hello, friends. Good morning. Happy Monday. My name is Libby, and welcome to my audio journal, Finding Joy in the Shadows, where I spend time each week talking about the fun curveballs life throws our way and help us look for pockets of joy. This is also an opportunity for me to continue working through my own life struggles while also sharing ways to help anyone who might actually be listening to me work through some areas in your own life that you might be struggling with so that we can all find joy together. For today's conversation, I want to take a moment to reflect on just how far this little podcast has come. What started out as one of the craziest, most far fetched ideas has now grown into something so much more than I ever could have imagined. This 20th episode that we're in also marks the end of season two, a milestone I could have hardly dreamed of ever reaching this time last year. Back then, the idea of doing something like this felt almost impossible. This time last year, it wasn't even on my radar. I was just trying to survive. Um, but when it came to me, it was a ridiculous idea. Now, so many doors are opening, bringing opportunities and possibilities I never thought possible. But before we get started, before I get too far ahead of myself, per usual for the last time this season, I want to spend a few minutes catching up on some recent happenings from around the world and dive into a few, actually really just one LP this week. And it's not even a Libby's problem. It's actually a real world problem, as my nephew always wants to know whenever I reach out to him and I say, "Hey Jackson, I need to talk to you." He'll ask, "Well, is this a Libby problem or is this a real world problem?" And today, it's a real world problem. It is not just an LP. Um, and there's really only one story right now worth talking about as I'm recording today. Um, One of the biggest events that happened in the last 48 hours was that TikTok officially went dark for exactly 12 hours, despite President Biden stating he would not enforce the pending ban set for January 19th. The company still decided to shut down its servers. Cue the conspiracy theories, right? And if I'm being honest with you, which I strive to do every week, I'm in one of those conspiracy camps too. This whole situation felt sinister, like a calculated PR stunt to position the incoming president as a hero to the masses. Yay, thank you so much for giving us back our app. And it was nice to see that pretty much nobody was buying it, because it was fairly transparent. Um, I know for me, it left me with a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm not even on the app. If I'm being honest, I did create a profile a year ago, solely to follow JK from BTS so I could see his dance videos in real time and not wait for them to get transferred to Instagram where I was usually seeing them. But I deleted it the moment Homeboy entered the military last year in December. So I'm really not on there. And I wasn't even on there when I was on there. But as expected, people were not happy, to say the least. Honestly, it was a little exhausting to watch everybody's freak out over this one little app. It made me question, if only people would freak out like this, or show this much level of outrage over issues like mass shootings or childhood hunger, But for some reason, this was the hill many chose to fall on. Um, I saw many frustrated users flock to an app called RedNote, or maybe it's Redbook. I'm honestly not entirely sure. What I do know, it is literally a Chinese app, and everything on it is in Mandarin. So if you choose to sign up with this, you don't know unless you read Mandarin. You do not know what you are actually signing up for or agreeing to. And I won't lie, I was a little appalled at how eager I was watching people jump onto this bandwagon, seeing countless videos and reels of people proudly advertising their move to the Chinese app in protest over losing their TikTok. But as time went on, I started to get it a little bit anyway. Um, I had a conversation with my nephew Jackson about it, and he helped put things into perspective. And he pointed out that our own government here in the US, along with companies like Meta, Google, Amazon, Twitter, they already have access to all of our data and they sell it to people without our knowledge and certainly without our approval. So the question he was asking me was, what's the harm in one more entity having our information? Now, it's kind of a loaded question, but I got the point where he was coming from, and it made me understand where everyone else was coming from too. I will say my nephew Jackson is one of those just rare old souls. He inherited my grandma Sylvia's stoic mentality. And like I said, I had to admit, homeboy had a point. And once I allowed myself to be open to that, I saw another angle I couldn't deny. News media, real news, is incredibly scarce right now. And TikTok has become a tool for people to communicate directly with one another, exposing truths that our corporate media often obscures with smoke and mirrors, or just choosing not to show it at all. So I could understand if this source goes dark and we lose access to it without a viable replacement, well, then we're left solely with corporate media and their slant on the news stories and the ones they choose to share. So at the end of the day, I get it. If your biggest concern is finding a media source you can trust, there are a few I personally rely on. These are as independent as you can get. Some are middle of the road, lean left, but they're as middle of the road as I could find. And I looked at all of the grids and compared and contrasted before I wanted to share these. So I wanted to give my honest opinion on these. And they are ProPublica, PBS NewsHour, the BBC, Reuters, and to some extent, The Intercept and the Midas Touch. Those last two, they are middle of the road, but those definitely lean more left. If I'm continuing to be honest with you. As for the future of the app, I honestly don't know what's in store for it. I'm still not on it. I still won't be on it. What I do know is that the whole stunt left a lot of people angry. Where that anger goes, only time will tell. But I do believe in the power of the people. And I encourage our young, bright, local entrepreneurs to develop their own platform. Let's embrace and support the home team. If you think Meta has a monopoly and Twitter can't be trusted, nothing's stopping you from creating your own app. After all, some of the most successful apps were born in garages and dorm rooms. All right. It's the only LP or real world problem that I had on my radar. For the rest of our time today, like I said, I want to reflect on how far I've come and all that I have shared with you so far. Like I said, today marks the 20th episode of Libby's audio journal. Crazy, right? I still can't believe I even just said that. 20 episodes. This time last year, I was at a crossroads facing one of the darkest moments of my life. While I'll continue to say this, the details of what brought me to that place are not important. What truly matters is the choice I made to turn things around. This time last year, at that time, my usual go-to life coach, Amy, was on maternity leave. And I felt too ashamed to share any of this with my friends or family. I didn't want them to know just how bad things had gotten. I knew enough to know that I didn't want to keep going further down the road I was on. I could see exactly where it was leading me, and I knew enough to realize I didn't want to end up there. And in that moment of clarity, I heard a voice within me shouting, things need to change, and they need to change right now. I was definitely in uncharted territory, friends. Without my trusted help, Amy, or the help of family and friends to guide me, I had to look inward within myself to find the strength to pull myself forward, to pull myself out. I didn't have a blueprint for what to do next, but thankfully, the years I had spent working with Amy had given me the tools to piece together kind of an action plan. Over the last decade, she has guided me through so many moments of self-discovery and growth that I was able to draw from those lessons, even in her absence. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect, friends, and it certainly wasn't easy either. But having that foundation is what allowed me to take those first few steps towards my healing. And I leaned on the things Amy had taught me, acknowledging my feelings, taking ownership of my story, and focusing on small, manageable actions, small little victories on a daily basis. Those lessons became my lifeline. And it was what was guiding me as I slowly started to rebuild and find my way forward. In those early moments of 2024, just this time last year, when I was in it, I wasn't aware I had an audience. Sure, there were about 3 or 4 people who knew the real whole story of what I was dealing with. So on some level, I should have known they'd be paying attention. But honestly, I was oblivious to it all. I was so laser focused on getting healthy that I didn't stop to consider how my actions might be impacting those around me. So you can imagine my surprise when my very dear friends, Jesse and Chris, each came to me separately and independently, encouraging me to teach others how I was doing this. To me, I didn't feel like I was doing anything different or monumental. But to them, they saw me moving mountains. Jessie, I will say, became a little relentless in her approach to get me to just open up to the idea of doing this podcast. And to be honest, starting a podcast had been one of those pipe dreams I had entertained a few years ago, but never, ever took seriously. It was one of those off-the-cuff ideas you casually mention, like, wouldn't it be fun to do this? But never actually follow through on any of it. In fact, the one time I confided in someone about how cool I thought it would be to start a podcast, that person quickly betrayed my trust by laughing about it with someone else. I was annoyed at first, but I was not entirely surprised because, if I'm being honest to myself, it really was a silly idea. It felt silly back then, and honestly, still kind of does. However, Jesse and Chris seemed determined to make it their life's mission to convince me to give this a try. I couldn't wrap my head around their motivation or understand why they felt so strongly about getting me to open up my mind to this idea. I kept expecting other people to join in and laugh with me when I told them what my friends were encouraging me to do. I thought, surely someone is going to agree with me that this is just silly, right? But I was genuinely shocked when one after another, everyone around me, from my very matter-of-fact sister Rebecca to my analytical brain bestie Teresa to my stoic nieces, my nephew, coworkers, my neighbors, other friends, and eventually Amy when she came back from maternity leave. Everyone agreed and celebrated this idea. Even now, I'm still a little stunned by the responses. No matter who I turn to, hoping they would tell me, no, don't do that. It's stupid. I couldn't find a single person who would say that to me. Instead, I was met with encouragement and love, and one after another, kept telling me this was a good idea. And as someone who looks to the universe for clues, it was as if the universe was refusing to give me an excuse to back out. The moment I allowed myself to be open to this idea was the moment I began treating it like a real project, just like I would at work. I sat down and wrote out a project charter. Thank you, Jackie Secco, for helping to teach me how to make a project charter. I detailed my executive summary, my goals, the scope of the project, and even outlined my key deliverables. The more I thought about it and talked about it as if it were already real, the more I started to get excited and started to believe in it myself a little bit. Part of the scope I defined was this. The end result of the project, Libby's audio journal, Finding Joy in the Shadows, will be a fully operational podcast platform that regularly releases engaging episodes focused on finding joy and positivity in everyday life. That's when it clicked for me. That's when I finally got it. I thought if this podcast could help just one person find joy, then all of the work and effort will be worth it. So in April 2024, I sat down and listed out roughly 20 topic ideas. This became my plan. I will record and release 20 episodes and then evaluate the response. From there, I would decide whether or not to continue. It felt like a manageable, structured approach, one that gave me room to explore this idea without overcommitting. Little did I know how much this journey would evolve. I have to admit, I am not entirely sure what this says about my psyche, but I have thoroughly enjoyed writing out my thoughts and recording them for everyone to listen to. I will say, though, the most surprising piece of feedback still that I have received so far is that apparently I have a good voice for this. Who knew? I am so deeply thankful that anyone has given this podcast a chance. I have said this before, and I will say it again. There is a German saying that I love, and it is vielen Dank. Vielen Dank, which essentially means I am so beyond grateful and thankful. And truly, there aren't enough ways for me to convey how thankful I am. This idea that started so many months ago is now a full-fledged podcast. My voice can be heard in 16 countries around the world, and we are only 6 months in. Recently, I had dinner with one of my very dear friends, Kirsty. You know her as the friend who introduced me to BTS. And yes, please continue sending all your hate mail about my annoying obsessions to Kirsty. But over dinner, Kirsty asked me how the podcast was going, how I felt about its future, and if I had learned anything from recording nearly 20 episodes at that point. I told her that one of the biggest lessons I am learning as I continue to work on myself and scrutinize these topics under a microscope is just how interconnected everything is. Analyzing each piece of the puzzle, how I've navigated these topics in my own life, has been incredibly eye-opening. But what stands out most to me has been this. We are all walking around battered and bruised in some way. Every conversation we enter, every relationship we form, and every conflict we face is influenced by the baggage and bruises we are carrying. We bring our own broken, damaged, and imperfect selves into the mix. Our years of trauma and unhealed wounds, all of it is walking with us every step we take. When we hurt someone or approach a conflict, no matter how small the argument is, we aren't acting in isolation. We are shaped by what's beneath the surface. And I say this with all the respect and empathy in the world because I'm right there too. I'm doing the same work, carrying my own battle scars. That has been my biggest epiphany through doing all of this. And as I look back over these episodes from season 1 and season 2, I can't help but laugh at how silly I sounded in those first handful of episodes. I've been working hard not to use phrases like I don't know or I didn't know. But if I'm being honest with myself, I was learning very quickly what not to do. And listening back to those first 8 episodes makes me cringe a lot. I was definitely still figuring this out and finding my voice, but despite the rough delivery, the core points I made back then, coupled with everything I just said, still hold true today. Here are a few moments that stand out to me, and I hope resonated with you as well. As I wrap up this season, I hope these are the messages that you took away, that you continue to take away, and I am planning to build on them for next season. And that is, we can only control our attitude, our effort, and our actions. Remember that? If anyone listened to the first episode, I guess technically the second episode. When we find ourselves in conflict, it is crucial to recognize that we are likely not the sole victim. There's our side of what happened, their side of what happened, and then somewhere in the middle usually lies the truth. Whether you contributed to the situation, or maybe reacted poorly to the situation, or maybe it was a little bit of both. I have found it is important to take responsibility for your part. Also, do yourself a favor and let go of the victim mentality. Focus on your own story and your journey instead of dwelling on what others have done or said. As long as your attitude, effort, and actions come from a good place, that's all that matters. If upon honest reflection you realize you could have handled things a little differently, well, then don't shy away from owning it. Offering an apology, or at the very least an explanation, is not a sign of weakness, friends. It's part of personal growth and accountability. Trust your gut, take responsibility, and make things right. That's how we continue to grow and how we build self-awareness. Don't forget my homegirl Mel Robbins' mantra, the let them theory, let them approach. I don't know, the principle, let them. It's a principle we can apply to almost anything in life. Personally, kind of wish I'd learned this back in October of 2023, but it wasn't until April 2024 that our message ultimately reached me. No matter what someone is doing or not doing, or what they might say to provoke you, simply let them. If someone doesn't want to call you back, let them. If someone acts irresponsibly, avoids accountability, and then shifts the blame onto you, from personal experience, you just have to let them. Let people behave however they choose. Their actions reflect them, not you. Instead, use your energy and time to decide how you want to respond and move forward. By embracing the let them approach, we free ourselves from unnecessary frustration and focus on what truly matters, our peace and growth. Now, I know this next part might sound a little cheesy, but one of the simplest ways I have found to invite joy into our life is by practicing gratitude. Maybe your ego won't let you openly tell the people around you how much they mean to you, and that's okay. Start small. Write it down in a journal. Spend a few moments each week reading through a list of all the things and all the people you are grateful to have in your life. Pausing to give thanks helps us realize just how lucky we really are, even in tough times. I will say, me personally, I found that when life feels overwhelming, taking a moment to read through my own gratitude list has helped chip away at any anger or frustration that might be lingering on the surface. It's like a breath of fresh air for your soul. Teaching ourselves to pause, reflect, and show gratitude lets a little bit of light in, even on the darkest days. Forgiveness isn't about giving or receiving an apology. It's about learning to humanize the other person, to see all sides of the situation, When we do this, the weight of the anger we are holding onto begins to lift. Forgiveness is about letting go of anger, whether it's directed at a person, a conflict, or maybe even a memory, so that it doesn't continue to weigh us down and block us from experiencing joy in the future. And don't forget to sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon in your coffee as part of your morning ritual. Not only does cinnamon offer plenty of health benefits for your mind and body, but it's also said to nurture your soul and invite more abundance into your life. And honestly, who wouldn't want that? Okay, I know this one probably is a shorter one, but I think I have babbled on long enough. This officially wraps season 2. Crazy. I can't believe it. These episodes really flew by. I had fun working on them. I had fun writing them. I had fun recording them. I had fun receiving feedback. For the moment, though, I'm going to shift my focus to my day job and start preparing for season 3. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. Please take care of those around you and stay mindful of what's going on in the world. Remember, what do you want your echo to be? What do you want to plant? The moment you find yourself giving in to anger or getting riled up, use that as a sign to be like, oop, I need to pull back. I do not want to add to this anger. I want to do the opposite because I want my echo to be good. I want to put good out so that good can return. And don't forget to find me on Instagram at Libby's Audio Journal. I would love to hear your thoughts or get ideas for topics you'd like me to cover next season. And as always, we will add to this. We will add more to this next time. I hope you have a fantastic day, an amazing week, and until we chat again, peace out, friends.